Hello, everyone. Connie Pratula, the Menopause Navigator. Welcome back to my channel and this episode of Navigating Midlife Live. I hope you're having a fantastic day, and I hope you had a great weekend and a good start to the week. So today's topic, hormone replacement therapy, now more commonly called menopause hormone therapy. This is a topic that sometimes can be somewhat controversial, but there's definitely a lot more information that is being shared about the benefits of hormone therapy, or I'm just going to call it menopause. I'm just going to call it hormone therapy. I'm going to keep it simple. I don't want to get in between the two different names. So it can sometimes be somewhat controversial. It can also sometimes be very confusing for a lot of women who are, entering those stages of menopause, and they're feeling the symptoms. And, a lot of times they're just told, go on hormone therapy, and not really given a lot of information about it. So I'm not going to go into all of the details of hormone therapy, why not, or the different forms, because there are different forms. But I want to talk more about, you've gone on hormone therapy and you're still not feeling good, and why. Why is that? Now, maybe it has been extremely beneficial for you. There are a lot of women that the moment they go on hormone therapy, it just clears everything up and they feel fantastic. They feel like they did before, or sometimes even better. They're sleeping better, all those types of things, because we do sometimes forget that perimenopause can start to affect us years before we start to feel the major symptoms of, especially things like hot flashes, night sweats, the brain fog, those types of things. All that stuff can happen very gradual. So when some women go on hormone therapy, it's like, hallelujah, like, oh my gosh, I feel fantastic. And that's wonderful that it works that way for some women. And then there's other women that go on hormone therapy and they maybe get small benefits, but they're still not feeling great. And then in my situation, I went on hormone therapy, and it it actually made me feel worse. There were other things that were going on after I went on the hormone therapy that it was causing, that just made me feel worse. So I stayed on for about a year trying to see if it would balance out and whatnot. And it didn't. So I just decided to go off. I didn't want to mess around with, trying to figure things out. I wanted to just let my body do things naturally. So that's a choice that I made. And of course, again, in retrospect of everything that I know now why my body wasn't working well with hormone therapy. And those are the things that I want to share with you today, because I feel that they are important to share. And how do I put this? And of course, I'm never afraid to be somewhat controversial, but there are definitely a group of practitioners out there that say, various things like diet and digestive health and, toxic overload, all those things. That has nothing to do with it. That's not, paying attention to those things isn't going to help you. That hormone therapy is the only thing that's going to help you. And I would like to politely disagree. And I feel that it's very unfortunate as well, too, that there are practitioners out there that are saying those things, that they're making women believe that the be all and end all is going on hormone therapy, and that's the only way that you're going to feel good. Well, for the woman that doesn't feel good on it, or isn't getting the benefits and struggling, that's really unfair to tell that woman that there is no other option, that there's nothing else that can help you. This is kind of it. And there's probably, you're probably just, something else is wrong with you. And that's as well too, where sometimes women can then start to be put on multiple types of medications, which again is not fair. And I'm very, very passionate about this because, again, because of my own journey, I I was completely sold on hormone therapy, that I wouldn't be able to think right and I wouldn't have the energy and that I was going to get old looking and all these things. And I basically, I felt like if I don't go on this, what's going to happen to me? And when I felt worse, and I thought, you know what, I'm just going to take my chances of going off of it and see what happens to my body. And the funny thing is on my mom's side of the family, she was the oldest of nine, so there was seven girls in her family. None of them have ever been on hormone therapy. None of them. Even my aunts that are still alive, never been on it. And so I thought, you know what? I'm just going to take my chances. My family history is good as far as not being on hormone therapy. I'm going to do the same. Okay, so I digress. But I feel it's important to share just another perspective. So, of course, as you know, I left the corporate world, or if you're watching for the first time, you might not know. I left the corporate world to study nutrition, and I was right in the midst of menopause and feeling very unwell, and so started to work at things. So this is why I'm really, really passionate about letting women know that there could be other underlying issues that the hormone therapy isn't going to address. So let's look at it this way. Okay, if and I'm trying to think of a good analogy, and I can't at the moment, but if you have a body that is overloaded with a number of things, for example, maybe you're being exposed to a lot of toxins, and I'll clarify that more later, but maybe you're being bombarded with a lot of toxins. Maybe you have very high levels of stress, and potentially you have a thyroid issue that maybe hasn't been diagnosed, that maybe you're just on the borderline of being high normal. um let's see, I made some notes because sometimes I forget some things. Oh, the other one, big one. See, I know to write these things down because sometimes I get on a tangent and then I forget about certain things. And maybe your lifestyle just needs to be changed a little bit. And I'm not passing any judgment whatsoever. I'm here purely to provide the information, to give you some insights as to why the hormone therapy isn't making you feel as good as you hoped it would. So let's go to the digestive health. Let's start there first. And I'll start there first because I am a nutritionist, and digestive health is one of the most important things in my mind. And I say that jokingly, but I actually say it in all honesty. Without a healthy digestive system, our body is it it's just going to struggle. If you don't have a healthy digestive system, how is your food, or how is your body going to take the nutrients that you're eating and break it down so that it becomes beneficial for your body? Okay, so that's number one. Along with that, and this is where some of the toxins can come in. Sometimes we're eating, they refer to the SAD diet, the standard American diet. But I guess what could we call it in Canada? The standard Canadian diet. I mean, it doesn't matter what side of the border you're on. There are people who are eating a lot of processed foods, packaged foods, fast foods. And I get it. Life can be busy, and you want to make things convenient, so you pick something up, or you're out, and it's just easiest to grab a burger, or whatever, pick some sort of fast food. So that's a very big part of it. But then it could also be the food that we are buying and eating. And yes, food is expensive, and budgets can be tight. So this is where I recommend to my clients that, okay, if you can't afford all organic food, there is a list called the Dirty Dozen. You can search it online, find it very easily, and try to buy those as organic. It's a list of 12. I think there's actually kind of 14 because the last two are pretty close. But buy those organic, to at least reduce that toxic load. And then the others buy conventional or try to buy from local farmers markets. There's a lot of farmers out there that they're maybe not certified organic, but they follow organic practices. It's really hard to get that organic certification, and it costs a lot of money to get it every year, and they have to follow very, very rigorous standards. So there are farmers out there that follow really good practices, but they just don't go for the certified organic or for the organic certification. So, and you're supporting local, right? And that comes not just in the vegetables, but that also comes in the animal products that we eat as well too. Try to find fish that is wild caught as opposed to farmed. Again, that's another controversial topic. Some will say that farmed fish is better for us than what wild is. I'm still sticking with wild at this point. In the animal meat that we eat, like chicken or beef or pork, look for places that follow good practices as well too. They don't use antibiotics or hormones on their animals. Um, Grass fed. Sometimes they're grain finished, but at least if they have grass fed for the majority of their life, hopefully their toxic load is lower as well too. So those are some of the things to look at. But then there's our overall digestive health. I mean, we can look at the food and say, okay, I'm cutting out refined foods, I'm cutting out packaged foods. I'm going to make everything as much as possible, maybe eat out every now and then. But then the other side of it is what are we doing when we're eating? Are we stressed when we're eating? Are we eating in front of our desk? Are we eating in front of the computer? Or are we watching TV while we're eating and really not paying attention to how we're eating? And all those things relate to, okay, when you have a stressed body or you're eating very quickly or standing and eating. I remember my mom doing that in between clients, that she would quickly stand over the kitchen sink and she'd quickly eat something before her next client, rather than giving herself space to sit down and have a small lunch before she went back to work. Anyway, but there's lots of people that do that. And I was very guilty when I worked in the corporate world of eating at my desk before my next client, because it was busy. I had to do it. So, but when we're eating and we're stressed, our body's not producing all of the digestive juices that it needs to be producing. So you're putting food into a stomach that has very low stomach acid because it's stressed right now. It's not thinking about eating. And of course, it just goes down the line. The liver's not working properly. The pancreas isn't working properly. So now you put food into a body that's not producing all of the chemicals it needs to produce to break things down. Okay. So it starts there. And it can even start as simply in the mouth. When we're stressed, we're eating quickly because we're trying to get that food down really quickly. So we're probably swallowing chunks of food as opposed to really well chewed food. And my clients always laugh at me for, coming back to them when they're telling me that they're still having some issues. And one of the questions I ask, are you taking time to chew your food properly? And a lot of them go, no, I'm not. I don't really think about how many times I'm chewing. And I do ask them, just, you don't have to count how many times you chew, but as long as the food is really broken down before you swallow it. So what does this have to do with not feeling good on hormone therapy? Well, all of these systems work together. Our whole digestive system works together, along with eliminating the hormones that have been broken down out through our stool, helping our liver break it down in the first place. If our liver's not working properly because, we're congesting it with eating a lot of sugars or drinking alcohol or eating a lot of refined foods, then our liver's not going to work optimally to break down the hormones in the first place. So does it have an effect on why hormone therapy isn't working well for you? Of course it is, because you're putting more hormones into a body that's not eliminating the hormones properly in the first place. Okay, so there's part of it. Now let's talk about the toxins. Now I talked about the toxins in food as far as, chemicals that are sprayed on them or antibiotics or hormones. But then there's the toxins that we put on our body. And I actually saw a really, really good quote today that our skin is the biggest mouth in our body. And it was just like, whoa, if that doesn't say it plain and simple. And it's so true. Our skin basically eats everything that's on it. And that probably sounds a bit gross, but everything we put on our skin goes into our body and it has to be processed, especially by the liver. So if we're putting on a lot of perfume, then that's a toxic overload for our liver. If we're putting on a lot of body lotions that are scented or they have the various chemicals that are recommended that we don't put on our bodies, again, that's another toxic overload for our liver. Even things as simple as, the antimicrobial hand gels at various places, just let your body do what it should be doing. If you're out somewhere, wash your hands in the washroom. And even that, I'm even really careful about the hand, uh, the various cleansers and stuff that are out at places. Some of them are so strong and so toxic because the employees are also using that washroom. So sometimes they put really strong things in the soap dispensers. And so I'm just very cautious about those things. But all of these things that we put on our body, and that includes like the soap that we use to wash our bodies with, the shampoo, the conditioner, the makeup removers, all those types of things, that adds another toxic load to our body. So this is where, be wise of, what is actually going on your body because it goes into your body. So remember that your skin is the biggest mouth on your body. So let's talk about the thyroid here for a second. I've heard so many cases where women have said to me, I suffered with menopause for 10 years. I suffered with menopause for 20 years. No woman should be suffering with menopause that long. If you're on hormone therapy and you're still suffering with menopause symptoms, there's definitely something else that's going on. And a big one is the thyroid. Sometimes it's very common when women start to go through the stages of menopause that thyroid issues start to come up. And it's something that's not looked at closely. There's a lot of women that their thyroid number can look very normal, but they're still struggling with not losing weight or struggling with brain fog or other things like dry skin, thinning hair, those types of things. And if you haven't heard of something called Hashimoto's, there's Hashimoto's, which is involving with the thyroid. Well, there's a component of the thyroid that isn't commonly tested because when the thyroid, the TSH, the thyroid stimulating hormone, looks normal, a lot of times nothing else is tested. But there's something called thyroid antibodies. And I know I've covered this in a previous live as well too. So you might be hearing this all over again if you watch that one, but there's new people popping on. So I always have to make sure I cover these things off. So thyroid antibodies, when that's tested, that might show that there's actually something going on in the body where the thyroid is actually being attacked by the body's own immune system. And that can cover a whole lot of other symptoms as well too, including not feeling great, even though you're on hormone replacement therapy. So thyroid is one that even if they won't test all of the numbers like the T3, the T4, ask if you're just not feeling well, ask them to at least test the thyroid antibodies to just put your mind at ease. And generally, they will test that without too much difficulty. So let's talk about lifestyle. So yes, lifestyle. If you're still thinking that you're 20 and burning the candle at both ends, I don't want to say that, when we go into menopause that, we need to put limitations on ourselves. I don't believe that. Oh, I feel like I'm going to sneeze. Um, uh, when we go into menopause, we don't need to put limitations on ourselves. But when we're older, it does take our body longer to recover. So there's things we might have been able to do in our 20s that just don't feel as good when we do those same things in our 40s and 50s. And, it can be because of all of these things that I've mentioned, the digestive health, the thyroid, the toxic overload. So those can all play part and parcel to it. But also, our body does need the rest. Even when we were in our 20s, our body needed the rest. It was just able to recover faster. We should be getting anywhere between 7 to 9 hours of sleep each night. Lights out by latest at 11 o'clock. So lifestyle does play a big thing. Alcohol's another one that, if you're having a nightly glass of wine or even occasional glass of wine and, your hot flashes are still showing up, well, that could be part of it. And I know for me, when I cut out alcohol, that made a big difference in how I felt on a regular basis. And so it's a choice. It's all a choice, and I'm not saying you have to do it. I'm purely giving you the information. So lifestyle is a very big part of it. Not moving our bodies is really a very big part of it as well too. When we move our bodies, that gets our lymphatic system moving. In fact, that's really the only way to move our lymphatic system. When we're sitting sedentary, our lymphatic system is not moving. The only way it's moving is when we are moving our body. And a very big part of that is moving the muscles. So going for a walk, resistance training, even yoga, doing some stretching, all those things help move the lymphatic system. So if we're sedentary, that's not going to help either. um, Beyond lifestyle, the sleep, the movement, the alcohol, I talked about stress already, but that also is a very big part of it as well too. And having good boundaries, that's also part of lifestyle. If you're always making yourself available to everybody or having to solve everything within the family, those types of things, step away. You're allowed to say no. You're allowed to say no for your health. And I'm even finding this with people that I interact with that I maybe don't know very well. Sometimes people are, somewhat uh, codependent, and they look for people, even pure strangers, to help them solve issues. And this is something that we all need to be careful of, especially if we have a more empathetic type of nature or demeanor, that we feel a lot of compassion for people. But we do need to be careful that we don't get drawn into these things. We're allowed to have boundaries wherever we go. So those are the biggest things that I wanted to talk about with respect to hormone replacement therapy. I'm just checking to see if there's any comments, but there's not. So you most certainly can post comments in the replay as well too, and I'm happy to answer those. But these are some of the biggest things that we really need to pay attention to. We can't expect, I don't believe we can expect, that when our body is not working well, if there's underlying issues in our body and we put something in. Now, I don't want to call hormone therapy a medication, because it's not. It's support for your body to work with your hormones. So it's really not a medication, it is a therapy. But when we put something like that into a body that's not working optimally, and yet we expect these miraculous results that are, in all fairness, sort of being sold to us by a lot of practitioners that this is the be all and end all, this is going to make you feel amazing. And there's many benefits around hormone therapy as far as heart health and bone health, all those types of things. But those things, let's just say a medication alone is not going to protect you from all of those things like cardiovascular issues, bone issues. If you're not, moving your body, if you're not doing some type of resistance training, hormone therapy is only going to do so much for you. Same with, if you're still not eating a great diet, then hormone therapy isn't necessarily going to protect you from cardiovascular issues when you may not be eating a lot of fast food and refined foods. So we can't put that expectation on hormone therapy to fix all of these things. We need to look at overall, what is our body going through? How are we supporting our body? Are there areas of our life that we need to change so that the hormone therapy can work better? And really, at the end of the day, even with other medications, we put high expectations on things, even supplementation. We put high expectations on how they're going to make us feel or what they're maybe going to solve. But if we're not supporting our body in the first place, we're putting all the expectations on this substance that we're putting into our body when there's so many other factors that need to be looked at. It's unrealistic. It really is not realistic to think that we're going to feel better just because we're taking X. And I put supplementation in there because it's exactly the same thing. We're not going to have a miraculous turnaround if we're not supporting our body overall. Anyway, I'm going to get off of that soapbox of why hormone therapy might not be, ridding you of all of your menopause symptoms, but those are the main ones to think about. If you are one of these women who, two sides of it. If you're one of these women who is on hormone therapy, you're still not feeling great, you've talked to various practitioners, you still don't really feel you're getting any answers. I've worked with a lot of clients who've been in the same situation, and we've started to make gains on helping them feel better. Sometimes there's things I can identify that other practitioners can't. And I always start with the digestive system. That's where I always start, and I always find clues there. So I have a 30-minute complimentary consultation, and I would love to talk to you. I've got the information in the description down below, or you can go to my website, conniepertula.com. But there's no obligation. I am not hard sell by any means. Let's just have a conversation. I'd love to talk to you and see if there's something that I can identify. If you're a woman who you're really confused, you're not sure what to do, you're not feeling well, you're unsure whether you want to go on hormone therapy, I'd love to talk to you as well too. Um, maybe there are things that we can do to see, and there's things that need to be talked about. There are risk factors that need to be talked about before going on hormone therapy as well too, and those are things that I do talk about with my clients as well. So thank you very much for joining in. As I say, if you're watching the replay, please post your questions, or you can message me directly. The information to schedule a 30-minute call with me is in the description down below. And as always, I don't know what the topic will be next week for my live, but I will be back next week, Tuesday, 2 p.m. Pacific time, for another episode of Navigating Midlife Live. Thank you very much. Have an awesome day and a great week, and I hope to see you again next week. Thank you. Bye.